All right, guys, it is the first Hoops Nerd Channel Jazz Mailbag. We're going to do this every Friday. On these mailbags, I take questions from channel members. So if you want to ask me some questions, make sure you join the channel. I will put up a question on Mondays or at least early in the week in the it's the community tab. So make sure you check that during the week if you want to answer a question. Tonight is the first one. Pretty exciting. So let's get into this. We have our first question from Christian DeHaas. House money, baby. What do we see in the long term for Coach Hardy? Is he sticking around with the Jazz for a long time? Is he catching the next wave out of here? I think Will Hardy is going to be here a long time. One thing you've got to remember about NBA head coaches is one thing that they appreciate is longevity and job security. They're not that much different than all of us. You know, if you feel like your job is not very secure and you might be on the way out with a simple mistake or something, you may be updating that LinkedIn, that resume, and checking things out. So I think Will Hardy is no different than us. And in an NBA league where there's only 30 jobs, and you have a situation like Utah does where they have Danny Ainge with job security, Justin Zanuck, job security, and Will Hardy appears to have job security. We know Ryan Smith likes him. That is extremely appealing for an NBA head coach to know that you've got a job if you want it. And for Utah to have a very clear plan is appealing as well. I know the Jazz are probably not going to be very good this year, but Will Hardy has longevity, and it gives him a chance in these first 5 seasons as a head coach to develop himself as a coach. He's already had 2 years under his belt of just improving as a coach, and he has a chance to just get better and better. And we've already seen that when Will Hardy has a team of legit players, rotation guys, he does a good job with it. You know, things that I'll be watching, Christian, is just how does he game plan for other teams? And we've seen him do a very good job. It's going to be tough a little bit because you're going to have a lot more young players playing. So I think one thing we can gauge Will Hardy and how good he is this year is just what do these young players look like? Are they getting better? Are we seeing improvement? Are they getting the offense? Is the offense going well? And I think that's a thing we can look at with Will Hardy and just kind of gauge what he's doing. But I think he is not going to catch the next wave out of here. I mean, you know, it's not that common for coaches to do that. You know, this NBA league, you're just seeing coaches fired more often than you see coaches leave for another spot. I mean, how often does that even happen where a coach is like, I'm out? You know, Will Hardy is probably going to want to be here for a long time because if he's given that opportunity to build something, he's going to want to be a part of that too. They build these relationships, they build these cultures and systems. They have the whole system of coaches around them, assistant coaches that they get to pick out. And they've picked up multiple coaches this year. So I think a lot of the coaches from Quinn Snyder have basically all left at this point. At least the majority of them have. This coaching staff is Will Hardy's staff, and so he continues to get to build that and build something. So I actually think Will Hardy's going to be a long time, and that's really good because he's a good head coach. The thing about Will Hardy is he scares me. He's good enough that he can ruin this rebuild for the Jazz, you know, because he's that good. So the Jazz have made sure that they're playing young players that can develop and also not win too much because, my goodness, the Utah Jazz need to get a superstar. And that leads us into the next question. This comes from Milo Pond. Besides having a successful tank this year, what would need to happen this season to see it as a successful season? Is it more development in rookies, culture changing more, group cohesion? Well, I think a little bit of all of that. Obviously, the most successful thing from this season, if you just want to look at everything in a very myopic view, is getting a high draft pick and getting Cooper Flagg. That's like the number one hope. But there's a lot of goals this year, too. The Jazz need to find out with all these rookies who is going to be a future rotation player. We've seen some great things from Keyonte George, and I think Keyonte George has shown the Jazz that he is a piece that you want to develop for the long term. You know, the flashes from Keyonte George have been bright, and we've seen multiple of them, lots of things. So the big thing for Keyonte George this year is to just have those flashes show up more often, more consistency, right? The more consistent we can see Keyonte George in just everything he does, the better. You know, He's got to improve as a leader, and sometimes that's attitude in the locker room, sometimes that's building things up, but it's also learning to be strong when things aren't going great. Just some maturation for him would be really great. These young players, a successful year for the Jazz is coming out of it and saying, these guys are the guys we want to invest in, and then these guys are maybe guys that we don't. For example, a big time season is coming up for Walker Kessler. I wrote about it on SLC Dunk. I might make a video about it too and just talk about it. But Walker Kessler has a lot to prove this year. He could go one of two ways. He can go what he did last year, where he didn't look very tough, pretty soft, did not offensive rebound, didn't impact the game in a big time way. And I know you can go listen to the Zach Lowe podcast and someone like, who's the guy on there that just only looks at numbers? I can't remember his name, but just talks about the rim protection numbers. I'm sorry. The rim protection numbers are good for Walker Kessler, but something gets suspect to me when the Jazz overall have the literal worst defense in the NBA, and he can't earn minutes. Your rim protection numbers don't mean jack squat if you can't stay on the floor and the entire team sucks on defense when you're on the floor. Okay? So I get a little suspect with some those things. I like advanced numbers. Advanced numbers are good. Advanced numbers are fun, and they back up some of your takes and things. But you know what? You better actually show it when you're on the floor. Toughness matters. Grit matters, and there's no advanced stat for that, right? When I see you getting your shoulders, slumped after a bad play, or you're not able to make a play on offense and you start pouting because you're not getting to take the threes apparently you want to take, that's not what I want to see. And that's the stuff that's got to turn it around. It's year 3 for Kessler. It's time to make or break, because this is a season for Kessler where you can either show that you are a long-term starter and you're going to get a starter's contract and money, 7 or 8 figure money. Do you want 8-figure money or do you want 7-figure money, right? Well, Walker Kessler needs to prove that, and that he's a part of the future, because guess what? Utah has like 6 rookies coming in this year, or 3 sophomores, 3 rookies, whatever it is. Lots of young players, a lot. And all of these guys are, and so if Walker Kessler, who's in year 3, does not prove that he's a part of the future, then we're going to see a lot more trade rumors like the one I talked about a week or so ago with New York. If Walker Kessler comes out and proves it, it's awesome. It's great. It's something that Jazz fans can be excited about. But if he looks soft again, if he looks unimpressive, then you're going to see a trade happen, because Utah is going to have 3 more rookies come in the following year, right? You've got Utah's own pick that they're going to hopefully get Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey or Dylan Harper or someone like that. By the way, Dylan Harper, guys, my gosh, that guy is going to be freaking good. And he's like the 3rd player. He looks like a 6'6" Jalen Brunson. He's unbelievable. Could you imagine having that on the Jazz and being a cornerstone piece? My gosh. And that's like the 3rd guy. That's how good this draft is. Traore at 6'4" from France looks like an incredible point guard. And he's going like 4 or 5. And there are just other guys in this draft. We're not even talking VJ Edgecombe yet. So Utah is going to get a nice player with their own pick, plus 2 more. What if the Wolves suck? What if someone gets injured on the Wolves, and Utah gets like a 5 to 10 range pick? That might get you Common Malawach. And he might be the center of the future if you get him. Absolutely. So Walker Kessler needs to prove it. It is time. Show up time, baby. That's what this is all about. That's what sports are. That's what happens in this league. You better show up, or you will be shown a door and you'll be learning Chinese, buddy, in the Chinese league. So you better figure it out pretty quick, Walker Kessler, okay? All right. Thank you, Mill at Milo Pond. I don't know if I answered that at all, but we tried. Finally, from Jordan the GOAT Besserell. If the Jazz don't draft a superstar in the 2025 draft, do they have any chance of winning a championship in the next 5 years? Well, it's going to be tough. I mean, the Jazz have never won a championship, and that's because it takes a superstar. But the good news is 2026 is a really good draft too. And so if the Jazz don't draft a superstar in 2025, we'll see what they do in the offseason. We know that, I mean, this is my guess, but I think Ryan Smith is very interested in getting a star here. And I think it would either, whether it's through the draft or trade, I think he's willing to do both. And so that's the name of the game. If you do not get a superstar, you do not have a chance at the title. So I guess the answer to that question is 0. There is 0% chance the Jazz get a title in the next 5 years if they don't get a superstar. Now, if they don't draft it, it doesn't mean they can't get one. We obviously have seen other players get traded and have become superstars, but that's pretty rare. Most of these teams draft their superstars and build around them. You know, the only real example of a team making a trade and a player ended up turning into a superstar, I guess, would be SGA, at least in recent history. But, I mean, outside of that, you are the teams that get a player come into their program with and have that person be like a superstar is like LeBron James with the Lakers. You know, I guess you could consider Jimmy Butler with the Miami Heat, but they didn't even win a title. And Utah is just not going to get players in that way. And teams just don't trade their superstars. Like people talking about getting Luka Doncic, I'm sorry, that's not happening. Utah is either going to draft them or they're going to draft them, right? I mean, unless one of the players they've already drafted turns into that player, maybe. But otherwise, it's just not going to happen. Guys, I just want to make sure there's nothing. Okay, nothing in chat. So anyways, that's basically the answer. I know that's probably not the nicest answer, but really, if they don't draft a superstar in the 2025 draft, the thing is they can draft one in 2026. And that's kind of a timeline question because you're talking about in the next 5 years. Well, if they draft, let's say they get Cooper Flagg and he turns into everything everyone thinks, and I think he's going to be a special player. Well, it kind of just depends on how quickly he acclimates. But those superstars, it's usually year 3 when they really hit their stride, year 2 or 3. We'll see what happens with Victor Wembanyama, in year 2. But it takes time because once you get that star, then you have to build around them. And we'll see that's going to be interesting to watch the Spurs and how good they are with Wembanyama and the pieces around them. But they didn't make too big a splash. I mean, they did get Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes, so I think the Spurs are going to be pretty good. And who knows, Wembanyama might be there's a world where Wembanyama is the best player in the NBA next year. I don't know if that's probably a little aggressive, but in the next 3 or 4 years, very likely he's the best player. And so the question for the Spurs is, can they build around him? And Utah needs to get one of those top 5 to 10 guys to compete. Otherwise, it's just not happening. So you need Cooper Flagg. You need Ace Bailey. But man, Cooper Flagg is the name of the game. And then if you don't, then you just go again. Keep developing youth. And hopefully in 2026, you get AJ DeBonsa or one of those other guys in that draft, Cam Boozer, someone like that you can be really good with. That's really just what it takes. If championship is the goal. I know some people's goals is just, be pretty good and have a good time and get blown out in the playoffs. That's not what I want. And the Jazz keep mentioning that they want to win a title. And you got to get that superstar. Once you have them, then the name of the game is build around them, right? And, it's just you have to get that guy. Capital that guy, right? And once you do, then things get interesting. All right, guys, that's this Friday's mailbag. Hope you liked it. We're going to be doing this every week. The channel below, you can join as a rookie, starter, or all-star, and I will talk to you